Hello and welcome to The Art of Aging, a part of our podcast series from the Center for Abundant Aging in United Church Homes. We continue to look at what it means to age in the 21st century, encouraging positive and empowering conversations that challenge, encourage, and inspire all to age with abundance. Today, I have the joy of welcoming Susan Walker and Beth Boyd. Reverend Susan K. Walker is a deacon in the Episcopal Diocese of Washington. She was called to serve those on the margins of life. And before retiring in 2022, she served parishes in the Washington and Virginia dioceses and an affordable housing community for older adults in Washington, D.C. She is a graduate of the Washington Theological Union. She is a trained spiritual director and retreat leader with a focus on aging, spirituality, and contemplative prayer. In collaboration with Elizabeth Boyd, who I'll introduce in a moment, she co-developed The Path Ahead, Spirituality and Purpose in Later Life, a curriculum exploring the emotional and spiritual dimensions of aging. Elizabeth Beth Boyd is the Director of Community Outreach and Education at Seabury Resources for Aging, serving older adults. She also serves as a commissioner on the Commission on Aging in Montgomery County, Maryland. Beth's work encompasses congregational engagement, community partnerships, and advocacy, helping older adults navigate housing, nutrition, healthcare, and supportive services while fostering meaningful community connections. A published author and experienced leader in aging services, she is committed to equipping individuals and faith communities to help older adults maximize life with purpose and dignity. Welcome, Beth and Susan.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Beth and I have had the opportunity to work together many times through the American Society on Aging. We've led some workshops together. And there's actually another Beth, a part of the trinity of Beths. And it's great that you're able to be on our podcast. And I'm so glad that you brought Susan with you. So take us back to the beginning. How did The Path Ahead first emerge?
Well, so back in the beginning, which I guess was 2017, we at Seabury received a phone call from the Bishop of Washington, Marianne Edgar Buddy, whom you may have heard of. She famously told our president to have mercy and has since published a book about learning to be brave, called us in and asked us if we could develop a curriculum on the spirituality of aging for use by congregations. We have a long history with the diocese going back to our founding in 1924. So this was one thing that we had suggested to her might be a possibility. And it turns out that she was tired of going about her weekly visitations and being buttonholed by older members during coffee hour, and told that they felt like invisible in their own congregations, that everything was geared towards young families. And so to her credit, she recognized that older adults were not being served beyond worship and asked us to do something about it. So I turned to Susan, who is a friend of Seabury, and I knew she had expertise in this area. And we went about creating what became The Path Ahead.
So you worked in collaboration, and that was 2017. We'll come back to more details about it, but tell us where you are now. This is not just something that's happening in Maryland and DC and Virginia.
Well, that's right. We started off here in our own diocese, doing analog in-person trainings for this curriculum that we developed, which is 6 sessions. And then COVID hit, and we, like everyone else, had to pivot to online, and Bishop Buddy invited us to convert our analog materials to a digital format on their School for Christian Faith and Leadership, which is an online school with a variety of offerings. And so we did that. And now we are training facilitators across the country and even internationally. We have recently trained someone in Canada, so we're growing.
Excellent. So, for some people, they may be surprised that older adults in church would pull the bishop off to the side and suggest that they're not being heard and or being served by the congregation. And yet, there are all kinds of narratives in the larger culture around us that suggest that as we age, we are diminishing in all kinds of ways and that we are less important. So, tell us a little bit about how the path ahead helps to reframe aging as something other than diminishing, and why is that shift so important?
That's a great question. People are unaware of the word ageism and the term and what it means in their life. And I think that is the one thing we stress from the get-go with the group we're training, to be open and aware and alert to ageism, even in ourselves, because the society teaches us that aging is something that happens in the last years of life. It's not. It's something that happens every time we take a breath from birth on through our life. We're always aging. But the society teaches that, yes, this is the time of slowing down. They don't maybe use the word diminishment, but letting others take the lead on things that maybe somebody in the church or in the community has been doing previously. And just enjoy, sort of be over to the side. Don't make a fuss.
Move away.
Move away. Be
Sit
quiet.
down.
Be quiet. And we pick up on it. And some people have said, in my church, they don't listen to me. Nobody wants to hear me talk about my life. It's not relevant to what the church is doing. Like Beth said, our church is very interested in everybody, but particularly young families and young adults. So
Right.
This is just the way of the world.
And they're also structured, or have been largely, in sort of silos, so that there are senior ministries, quote unquote, that go and do things together that no one else sees, whatever they are. But that this has been part of this ageist approach. Mm-hmm. So the turn towards intergenerational ministries and cross purpose ministries with all ages is a healthy turn.
I was recently doing some research, actually, for a couple of different presentations, and I cannot remember who coined this term, but he talks about age apartheid. Yeah. And
that's right.
That's what we have, and the church has accepted that in our structures as well. So how does spirituality move us from that? The ageist, which ageism is the negative ways we think, feel, and act about aging. How do you see spirituality moving us away from thinking about ageism to aging with intention?
Well, first of all, I think ageism is about the way a person looks on the outside, how they act, their cognitive ability, how quick they are, and what they produce. Spirituality, on the other hand, which is something we all are born with, we have an inner life, but we don't talk about it. I don't know how many people aren't sort of aware that they have this inner life that's very rich, but it needs to be nurtured. And so spirituality is this concept, and we bring that word up in the first session as well, so we can get a gauge of what people think that means. Is spirituality being religious? Is it different? And we suggest a definition, or several definitions really, but that it's about how we live our relationships to one another, how we live into our relationship to God or your higher power, whatever you call the Holy One in your life. And that when we're in this last part of our lives, these last 30 years maybe, it can be a long time because we're living so much longer. And we have so much more to ponder and consider about what my life's going to be. And it's not about, being the active Jane Fonda workout person. I mean, you can do that, of course, but it's about what's going on, my experiences of God, and how comfortable I am with that reality. So that's why we incorporate contemplative practices and take a way of looking at things from a spiritual perspective, not just a physical or the emotional side of aging, but the spiritual side too.
Yeah, I've heard others suggest that as we age and as we don't physically move as quickly as we once did, for instance, and we don't have to necessarily because we're not working on the time frames of employers and other social clocks, that just that slowing down is a part of what enables us to do some of that inner work that we just haven't taken time to slow down and do in other parts of our life. And that it can force us or provide the opportunity to be able to do that inner work, I think, more effectively or more freely.
Well, and hopefully we are living under so much anxiety and stress these days that I see this comment about take a pause, learn to breathe. That's coming up for everybody. And that's the way it should be. We should be teaching children some ways of calming down and being with their bodies, being with their breath, and feeling the presence of God holding them. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. And we all have activities that help us. I know that for me, bird watching, when I'm out bird watching, I notice more insects than I do at a point in time because I'm slowing down and I'm paying attention to things that are moving.
Yeah.
Beth, I'll bet you see things while you're kayaking that you don't see when you're.
That's exactly right. A different pace,
Yeah.
a different horizon, and it's quite different.
Yeah. Even being down at water's
On the water's
yeah.
level. That's right.
Yeah. And even if you do have a dry suit that's going to keep you warm, I'm still not sure I'd get in a kayak in March, but I'm here in Ohio and it's a little colder.
That's right.
So what are other coming to terms with terms? You've talked about having in the curriculum having to kind of lay the groundwork of what you mean by spirituality, aging. Are there other terms that are important for this work?
We talk about what is gratitude. What does it mean to be resilient? Because there's this idea that young people are resilient, But we talk about this as a quality that we can nurture in our lives and that there are ways to go about doing it. And one of them is being in a community to have resources and people who support you in this time of life.
Yeah.
So, and the whole attitude of gratitude rather than waking up grumpy every day, which if I'm aching and in pain, I probably don't feel good and I don't want to be grateful. But there is a way to look out the window, notice the birds, and see what it is that I've been given as a gift today.
Yeah.
That's right. We do several exercises that ask these facilitators in training, who will then in turn do this with their participants, looking at how have they in the past approached change. How have they either embraced change or resisted change. And just about everyone can center on some pivotal moment in their past where this was a big issue, and then we ask them, they get together and there's a story involved, and then they get together and in pairs and talk about it. And what did they learn from the experience? What did they learn about themselves? And often this issue of gratitude comes up which we, of course, follow with a session about gratitude and resilience, because the alternative is a lot of complaining and sort of being twisted and bitter. But if you can stop, consider how grateful you should be. By this time, you are experiencing longevity of some sort. Not that everything is Pollyanna perfect, but that this position of a posture of gratitude has so many spiritual rewards and can kind of reset your outlook in a really positive way.
Yeah. I know that you've said that another one of the sessions that's so powerful, in addition to gratitude, has to do with lament.
Yes.
Why is that so important? And why do you think we often overlook that as a spiritual practice in later life?
Well, we move from talking about ageism and identifying these terms to getting people to identify their spiritual needs at this time of life, this season of life. And those spiritual needs have undoubtedly changed as people have grown older. And we get them to actually put them up on a big poster board. And they want things like forgiveness, and acceptance and grace and things that are really concerning them as their time horizon has foreshortened. But one of the prayer practices that we introduce is lament, which most people are familiar with through the Psalms. And in fact, we use a couple of the Psalms to introduce this sort of rubric of what happens in a lament. But a lot of people don't realize that this is something they can do in their own language, from their own what's heavy on their heart. And there's so much to lament about these days, as most days. It could be personal, it could be social. And so we give them a rubric and give them 20, 30 minutes, put some music on and ask them to use that to write their own lament. And for a lot of people, it's very groundbreaking. They didn't realize they could, first of all, we know that we can call out to God, but some people have sort of put the Psalms in that's set in stone and that's scripture and that's not, something to be toyed with. But when you realize that it can be a living, breathing practice, it's very liberating.
I love the fact that you asked the participants this question. What is God calling you to now? How does that question land differently for folks who are 65 or 75 or 90?
Well, when people are 65, they're likely possibly just quote unquote retired, which we actually investigate that language in the course, which is it has its own ageist history. This idea of sort of becoming smaller and diminishing into a corner now that you are retired.
Well, literally, the only thing that word means is that I used to work.
Right.
There's nothing about who I am now or where I'm going.
Right. So, but we prefer the other notion of jubilee or jubilatio of rejoicing at this time of life. But so 65-year-olds are often what we call the young old. And 75-year-olds are just the old. And then 90-year-olds are the older old, right? So gerontologists sort of split this up to give meaning to these different phases. But I understand that when people have only recently finished paid employment, that they're rushing off to pursue all their passions, including acts of service. But it's not too long before they discover they can't do it all either. So we end the series with a couple of sessions focused on discernment about what is mine to do? Using the Frederick Buechner quote about the place God calls you is where your deep gladness and the world's hunger meet, as well as Mary Oliver's famous line, "Tell me what it is you plan to do with your one wild and precious life." And so there's an emphasis on focus. Yes, you want to serve in these years, but you can't do it all. And there's so much need in the world. What is yours to do?
Yeah, I'd love to just also go back to that idea of what is the purpose of a 90-year-old's life? What is the call there? Because there is this kind of balance for all of us, but we get out of balance of giving care, giving service, giving from my gifts and talents, but also being receivers. And it's really hard to receive when you're in denial. And you kind of like, oh no, I can do it. Don't worry. Don't help me. I can make it across the street, even though I fall down in the middle of the street. And that did happen to me once. So once was enough. I won't do that again. So this whole idea of being frail, not old, but frail, because in your 90s, it's going to happen. The body.
If you make it to 90, yeah, probably.
Yeah, my brother's 85 now, and he's talking about some things that he hadn't talked about before. But gosh, he's really out there doing stuff too. But, when you're in that time of life, it is a time to have a calling to receive from other people. And we have an article that we use written by she used to be a seminary professor, and it's about how those in the nursing home or long-term care, receive nurses' friendship, receive visitors, and that is a calling that they have. And to listen, they're good listeners maybe, or maybe they just want to complain about things too. That's part of it.
But just the ability to evoke compassion from other people is itself a calling. We also use this great audio recording from this group of cloistered nuns about the grace of interdependency. And it shows, and they are so funny. They live together, and some of them have cognitive decline, physical decline, but they're a mixed age group, and they demonstrate, how countercultural it is to receive care and to be okay doing that in our society, which is so focused on being self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I just read an article by, I don't know her first name. Her last name is Wittenberg Cox. It comes through the Stanford Center on Longevity. And she talks about the 4 quarters of life, and that the fourth quarter she calls harvest, and that's 75 to 100. And she calls this the quiet power of legacy. And this is the wording she talks about. This is the time of staying awake to what still calls.
oh wow.
To whom we can pass the baton, to what must be said before we go. This is the quarter not of doing more, but going deeper, so that others may go further.
Well, that's in our church context, that is such a powerful role to play, to be a mentor,
Yeah.
to be the institutional legacy who can tell everybody what went before,
Yeah.
and to pass along your knowledge.
Yeah. So I know that contemplative practices are the backbone of this program. Why do you think that this awareness is powerful at this time of life, and how do the contemplative practices in the midst of this program with the cohorts, how does that all come together? What are the fruits of that combination?
Well, when we're doing the training, people have the opportunity to practice something new that they haven't done before. And these are folks that are going to be leading others in it. So we try to give them as much support in that as we can. There's a video, there's some narratives, there's some. We have a praying with your imagination that imagines being Moses at the burning bush and some questions to ask. So we hope that people will understand that accessing God's spirit in their life and how God may be calling them to do something that they hadn't thought of or see themselves in a new way is ongoing. It's not something for young people, middle age. It's for everybody because God is always calling us, never stops. And that is something that the church isn't really doing, I don't think, too much of. But to combine it with the theme of generativity and aging as such a rich time of life, I think it's a great combination.
Yeah. I tell people that if God were publishing a magazine, there would be no age limit as to who could be on the cover.
Yeah.
Or if God were producing
Amen.
if God were producing a movie, there would be no age limit as to the actors and actresses who play important roles in the film. Yeah,
That's right. Very inclusive.
So, what have the two of you absorbed personally through leading this program?
I think I've absorbed just from meeting so many different people across the country who are most of them a bit older than me, not a ton, but I think hope. I think seeing that your ability to thrive in older age is really only limited by your creativity and your imagination and your persistence. You know, there's some. I came across a conversation you were having with some trainees the other night, Susan, and there was some discussion about, oh, well, can we really transcend losses? And I kept thinking about that, and I thought, well, maybe we incorporate our losses, but we persist. You know, we slow down, but we don't stop. So that's one thing I've absorbed is seeing people who are, you know, they're just so creative and inspirational that it's really gives me hope.
And I was thinking of this is my time of life. I'll be 75 in April, and there's an abundance in my life, and I hear so much about scarcity in so many ways in the culture. And you know, you have to have enough money to retire, and you have to have this, and you have to have that. And I just feel like my life has, since retiring, since not working my day jobs, um, I have this opportunity to be really more cognizant of the abundance in my life on a daily basis. And these are little things, you know, not just something big. I didn't get a pot of money. I didn't win the lottery, but I have this sense of I am enough. And that has a lot to do with sort of getting over myself. And I have a group online. We do meditation, Christian meditation, and it's all about letting go of the ego and not being focused on me, not thinking about me, but being present to God. And that focus is so different because God is everything. God is reality. God is everywhere doing everything as far as I'm concerned. And so that kind of free thinking, which is a little bit outside of the box of the church, probably, you know, the institutional church, is what's really, you know, restored me or made me feel secure as I'm aging, no matter what comes next. And I've had 2 hip surgeries in 14 months. I've got 2 new hips now, and it was not what I thought it was going to be, but it's what it is. And it, you know, I'm still healing and whatever, doing those exercises. But you know, I can let go of stuff. And the other thing I think I've learned is let go of those illusions of what your day is going to be like or what your life is going to be like, because there's always, you know, the unexpected that I didn't ask for this. Yeah, that's an illusion to think I'm not going to have hardships, you know.
Right.
And there's peace. There's peace around accepting it.
Yeah. So, we had talked about what do you hope participants carry forward after completing the path ahead? You can answer it that way. Or are there things that you've heard from folks who participated in the path ahead that you hadn't and thought that that is what people would take away?
I'm expecting that this kind of group with a limited number of times of meeting would be something to have something spring forth from it as a more long-term way of being together with like a book study or some sort of just talking about. There's so many. We give people this bibliography, and there's just a lot of good things out there that are being published. Always, this is a big time for this subject.
So for you, the path ahead is not a dead end path, but it's a path that keeps going.
Oh yeah, it's
Well,
an open.
right, and we've had some evidence that this is the case because we've had a number of groups that once they conclude the 6 sessions, they want to keep meeting, and it transforms into either some sort of ministry together or a discussion group. I was with one yesterday at Cleveland Park Congregational Church. We went and gave a presentation there about end of life planning, but it was to a group that didn't even exist a few years ago and that grew out of their experience coming together to do the path ahead. So now they get together once a year. They're called the Aging Gracefully and Gratefully. And they get together once a month and either discuss an article that they've circulated or they see a film together or something like that. And it was just a really life-affirming group. I met all these cool people. And we've heard this from other groups as well. So, we don't know what it turns into, but the fact that there is new momentum at the end is very encouraging.
Very cool. Before we go any further, how can people find the path ahead, find out information about the curriculum and about how to do the training with you all?
Right. So I don't know if I should put this in the chat, if that's useful, or maybe not.
Just go ahead and tell us
So you can read more about it and register at the School for Christian Faith and Leadership, which you find at learn.edow, Episcopal Diocese of Washington, edow.org. And you will find a number of courses and you will see the path ahead.
Excellent. And the next time that you'll be teaching this will be
May.
Well, we're in May, but it's full. The next one with availability is in October.
Okay. So you do about 3 times a year, 2 times a year?
We do it 3 times a year in October, February, and May.
Great.
Yeah. And it happens online, Beth, with the in-person instruction happening on Zoom for 4 1.5-hour Zoom sessions, and then materials disseminated through the school's online platform.
So as we bring our conversation to a close, there are 3 questions which we warned you about that we ask all of your guests. Are you ready?
Yeah, I thought we'd already talked about them.
No. When you think about your own aging, what has changed about you and what do you like about your older self?
Well, while you're looking at your answers, Beth, I'll say, I wrote down the word freedom. I feel freer. I kind of shed that ego that I was raised to be the, perfect little girl and very Southern and, pleasing people. So now it's like, I like to please me.
Well, and then being in a role as a woman in the church as a deacon, there's also a little bit of, making sure we're doing what we're told and not raising too many feathers.
But I'm retired from a letter of agreement deacon responsibility, and so I'm doing things all over the diocese, and I'm doing things outside.
But there's freedom to that now that you're Yeah.
Yeah.
That next stage.
And there's this phrase,
Yeah.
I was at a book group last night. It was an Anne Lamott book that we're reading for Lent called Hallelujah Anyway. And she's talking about how we're born with mercy in our beings. We are merciful people, but then we get wounded and we hurt, and we become people who hurt other people. And then at the end of the life, as she's aging, of course, writing this, she realizes, no, my life is about being kind and merciful. So there's a phrase, the second naivete, which is a sort of a return to a not childish, but a kind of a childlike wonder about life and not having all the answers. So it's a little more intuitive and not being hung up on being the expert.
Well, it's letting go of the ego again.
That's it, exactly.
That's right. Yeah, I would have to say that that we talk in the series about spiritual maturity and what that might look like, as opposed to, well, Bishop Buddy actually a few years ago at our celebration of service gave a sermon called "Not All Become Elders." Some people just grow old. And so I'm thinking about examples of what spiritual maturity really looks like, and what you want to model your older years after. So I've been very Susan's a great model for me.
Watch out.
Yeah, watch out. No telling what I might do next, what I might unleash on our diocese. Yeah, but so that has been kind of instructive to be thinking about what that looks like. Yeah.
So, what surprises you about what you're doing at your age right now?
Well, teaching this course for me, I came out of being a university instructor in the humanities, and joining Seabury was a change of course for me professionally. And yet now that I look at it in hindsight, it sort of makes perfect sense, because I had this experience. Part of what I was attracted to with moving into aging services space was the experience of seeing my mother spend her declining years in a continuing care retirement community owned by her Episcopal diocese in Louisiana, and that experience with my siblings of saying goodbye to her. It sort of marries my interests and my talents. But if you had told me years ago that I would be doing this, you could have knocked me over with a feather.
Yes. Same here. Same here.
Yeah, and I will triple that, because I grew up in a family where my father was 51 when I was born, and he was basically an invalid most of my life. He had been alcoholic, and so he had a lot of medical issues. And so he wasn't this fun, happy, rah-rah, helping me out and doing things. And he was like an old man, and some people thought he was my grandfather. So I had this sort of like, I don't like being around old people. All of the family relatives were old. My cousins were old, and I was, the young kid. But, when I went to work in the church back in the 80s in Alexandria, it was the older women in the congregation, actually a lot of generals' wives, who knew how to run things. And they helped me get organized and be in this ministry that I was asked to do at this large church. And so it just, I don't know, it seems like I had to wake up and realize, yes, these are folks that are there for me. And I met somebody that Beth introduced me, I think, to at the seminary, who taught a course on aging in America one summer. I took that. Mm-hmm. So I'm thrilled that this is a part of my life. I was trained to be a teacher, and here I am. And then I'm doing online meditation groups with people from all over the United States. So this is the gift of COVID, that we have this ability right now to reach so many people. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, the last question is there someone that you've met or somebody who set an example that inspires you to age abundantly?
I have somebody in my life. and it's her name. She's deceased now. In 2008, I went down to Mississippi to this little town called Jonestown in the Delta, and I stayed with Sister Kay Burton, who was a Roman Catholic sister, and the sisters had gone down there to be pretty much the only white people in that community, but to help in school and after school classes and adult education and wellness and beauty. And I lived with her for a couple of weeks and participated in things she was doing with the community. And she was in her 70s then. So every morning she'd get up and go and walk around the track and get her exercise in. They didn't have much down there. And I'm just thrilled that she helped a community thrive and beautify the community, clean up some junky places, and help people with their education and know how to take care of themselves. So,
Yeah.
mhm. She's my
Well,
role model.
I would first say that Susan is a big inspiration to me.
No.
But I also have another friend. I will say, I find it extremely healing and invigorating, the sea kayaking that I do. And I guess it was 3 years ago that I did the circumnavigation of Manhattan, which was a big, fun, organized paddle. And it was sort of a bucket list thing. But the friend that I did it with was 76 at the time. A lot of people in my sea kayaking club are retired and older than me by a long shot. And I find a lot of inspiration in their example.
Very cool. Well, thank you for sharing. If anyone wants to be in touch with either one of you, where can they find you or how can they be in touch?
Right. They can find me at E. Boyd, for Elizabeth Boyd, at seaburyresources.org. Yeah.
And Susan Walker has that kind of address as well, swalker@seaburyresources.org.
Great. Well, thank you to both of you. This was great. Susan, I've heard about you for many years. It was great to meet you virtually. Always good to be in touch with you, Beth. Another project we've been able to do together here. And thank you to our listeners for your time with this episode of The Art of Aging, part of the United Church Homes Abundant Aging series. If you would like to participate in engaging conversations, please check out our new Abundant Aging Insight webinars. You can find the registration page on our website, abundantaging.org, or you connect with us on Facebook. In the meantime, may you look around you and identify a person who is aging ahead of you, who influences your understanding how to age abundantly by their own aging example. Until next time, thank you. Blessings.